Namaste, everyone. Michele Granberg here. Welcome to another episode of Positive Energy, spotlighting empathy and compassion for both humans and animals. On this show, we're focusing on deer. The state of New Jersey is home to white-tailed deer, which are beautiful mammals indigenous to North America. These deer have flourished in the Garden State for decades, frolicking freely in forests and backyards. Although deer may seem plentiful, they are actually significantly at risk and being killed in high numbers. On this show, my guest, Doris Lin of Animal Protection League of New Jersey, will talk about humane deer management and how we can protect these precious native animals. Stay where you are as Positive Energy starts right now. So Doris Lin, welcome to Positive Energy.
Thank you so much for having me back.
I'm glad that you're here. Today we're going to talk about deer. So, in New Jersey we see deer almost everywhere. Everywhere you go. It's so common to see deer in your backyard, to see them on the side of the road, around the woods. But how much do we really know about deer and what makes them unique and what they encounter on a day-to-day basis given they live so close to us? So that's what we want to talk about today. So I guess, Doris, start out by talking a little bit about deer themselves, some facts about deer.
Yeah, so deer are a keystone species in the ecosystem in New Jersey. That means that a lot of species depend on deer, interact with deer. So for fawns, for young deer, the main cause of death is predators. For adult deer, the main cause of death is hunting. And one thing that I didn't know until recently is every fawn has a unique pattern of spots. No two fawns have the same exact
like a thumbprint
pattern of spots. Yes, just like a fingerprint. Yeah, so that's really cool.
I love that. I love that, right? Yeah, we see them, and yet they've become so ubiquitous that we don't really think about them as individuals. So. Yeah. We hear a lot that deer are overpopulated in New Jersey. Is that really true, or is that factual? Is that a misconception?
So the deer are not biologically overpopulated. So we have both biological carrying capacity and cultural carrying capacity. Biological carrying capacity is the maximum number the ecosystem will support. And the deer have not reached biological carrying capacity, but they may have exceeded cultural carrying capacity, which is the number people will tolerate. So, there are a lot of human-deer conflicts. People don't like the deer eating their landscaping or, of course, running into roads. So those tend to be the issues we need to deal with and not the actual number of deer.
Again, it sort of circles back to us, human-centric.
Yes.
Yeah. So, talking about hunting, because unfortunately, deers are almost synonymous with hunting. Does hunting actually manage the deer population? Why does hunting not work?
So in New Jersey and throughout most of the country, hunting is a failed experiment. We've had deer hunting for centuries, and people still complain there are too many deer. And that's because hunting is not designed to reduce the deer population. And that's for a couple different reasons. First, the Division of Fish and Wildlife makes money by selling deer hunting permits. They rely on that money. They used to be supported completely by the sales of hunting, fishing, and trapping permits. Now they do get a little bit from the state treasury. So they have an incentive to keep the deer population high, and it's actually in their mission statement to provide recreational opportunities, which means hunting, fishing, and trapping, as well as, wildlife watching. So there are different ways they keep the deer population high. For example, on state wildlife management areas, they do clear cutting, they do prescribed burns, and those activities will create clearings in the forest, which creates that edge habitat that deer love. So that edge habitat has your shrubs, your saplings, and that's what the deer love to eat. In a mature hardwood forest, you actually have very few deer because you don't have those saplings, you don't have those shrubs. That canopy keeps the forest floor shaded, and you don't have a lot of saplings and shrubs growing up. They also plant crops specifically for the deer. They partner with hunting groups that will pay for the seeds to help plant those crops. The South Jersey chapter of the Quality Deer Management Association, they brag on their website about their partnership with the Division of Fish and Wildlife to help plant those crops for the deer because they want to grow those trophy bucks.
So there's a lot of bias there.
Yes.
So what is the status of hunters, like amounts of and volumes of hunters? Are licenses being given, are they increasing or decreasing?
Hunting is decreasing, and it's less than 1% of the population in New Jersey that hunts.
Where are those areas mostly? Because I never see them. I guess they're in deep woods. I mostly see signs on the road that say no hunting.
Yeah, they tend to be on like large state wildlife management areas, or sometimes private property, like farmers will allow hunters onto their land, because they don't want too many deer.
So hunting is decreasing in popularity, you would say?
Yes.
Because our consciousness is changing in some ways, and also because of the land itself. There's less land to hunt on.
Yes, hunters complain there's not enough public land for them to hunt on, so you have to know someone or pay someone, to hunt on their private property. Mm-hmm. And I do think, the culture is changing.
So say a little bit more about how deer are important to us, why we want to keep them around, why we want them to be alive, why we don't want to see them die off, and how they're connected to the ecosystem. So
yeah, deer are important for the ecosystem. They do, through their scat, they spread seeds, which is good for the plant life in the ecosystem. And they definitely get a bad rap when it comes to the forest. So a lot of times you see pictures of a forest where it's just a whole bunch of tall trees and the deer get blamed for eating the shrubs and the saplings. Sometimes those are mature hardwood forests, that just don't have the saplings and the small shrubs, and that's okay. Mm. Also, much more forest damage is caused by insects and invasive jumping worms than deer. So in New Jersey, we have invasive jumping worms that are destroying the soil and killing off parts of the forest. And unfortunately, this is not making headlines. So people see, an area that is deforested, and in their mind, they're blaming the deer. But these invasive jumping worms, it's not a sexy headline. We tend to see it like in scientific publications or, sadly, in the gardening section of the newspaper. So it's not really well known. Mm. Yeah, it's not a big news story, and it should be.
No, you're right. Exactly what you're saying. It doesn't make headlines. It's not sexy. Nobody wants to hear about it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and they literally jump when you touch them. These little earthworms.
So look it up, people. We want you to look it up, do some research about this. But once again, humans love to create the problem and then point the finger outside of them, especially at animals, mm-hmm. and blame them when we're responsible. So how much responsibility do we really need to accept for that? How do people affect deer behavior? How have deer evolved to adapt to us? And we're not adapting to them, but they're trying to adapt to us. Is it even possible to peacefully coexist with wildlife in this state, in any state?
Yeah. So one way, if you don't want deer in your yard, one way is fencing. I know a lot of people think fencing is ugly, but an 8-foot fence will keep them out. A way that you can fence your yard is by getting large posts and then stringing invisible wire or fishing line between the posts. And that way you can still see through the fence, sort of, and it's not as visually upsetting as, an 8-foot fence around your yard. Or some people just fence in their garden, if you have a vegetable garden that you want to preserve. And you can use wire instead of like a solid fence, and you can still see it. Some people use soap to try to repel the deer. You can hang whole bars of soap in your garden, or some people spread soap shavings around, and you'll have to replenish it after it rains. There are also sound effects that will keep the deer out. Some people swear by playing a radio. It's set to a talk radio station. There's also a motion sensor that will spray the deer or anyone who comes into your yard with water. It's a motion sensitive device.
Keep everybody out.
Yes, that's connected to a hose and will spray them with water. And those are supposed to be very effective. And there are commercial repellents that smell like predator urine that will keep deer out of your yard. And you can also choose deer-resistant plants, plants that are not so tasty to the deer. The Rutgers website has a nice list of plants that are deer-resistant.
So it's really not a big deal. I always wonder why it's so hard for people to change, to just take some of those actions and do some research. And so why deer come in the first place to our yards is mostly for food, because we make it easy for them to eat. Is that that's why?
Yes, they love those tulips, they love those hostas, they love our vegetable gardens.
Yeah. And do they come because they just love those foods and are drawn to them, or is there a lack of food, like you're saying, in their habitats, or their habitats are getting smaller?
Their habitats are getting smaller, they're getting fragmented, but they also love our vegetables, they love our flowers. And they love that edge habitat that is so prevalent in suburban neighborhoods. They love that clearing that's next to the forest, because that's where the saplings are. That's what they want to eat.
Do you think that we're almost domesticating these deer? They're getting so comfortable around us and getting so used to us. Is that good or bad?
Yeah, that's not good. It's never good to feed wildlife. Definitely do not feed wildlife. Intentionally or unintentionally. If you have a garden and you don't mind the deer eating it, you're feeding the deer. So yeah, we need to make sure we don't feed the deer and try not to get close to the deer. I mean, some people love to feed them, watch them, take photographs, but that helps them become used to humans. That helps them associate humans with food, and that's not good.
Yeah. So we want to repel them humanely, and prevent them. And because what we're seeing is you're right, they're not even naturally following their instincts to run away anymore. In so many communities, they will just stand there. You can be within 8 feet of them, and they'll just be looking at you, or they'll just, your car will be driving by and they won't run. So this is where we are.
Yes. And we can do things to keep them off the roads also. We can put up reflectors, we can put up signage reminding people to drive slower. And in Wyoming, they did an experiment where they had posts wrapped with white fabric at the top. And they believe that it looks like the tail of a white-tailed deer going up to warn other deer to stay away. And that was actually found to be even more effective than reflectors.
So those are good prevention for deer and car collisions.
Yes.
What is the rate? I think you said that, hunting's the number one way that deer are being killed here, and then is car accidents number 2. Natural causes number 3.
That's a good question. Actually, I don't know what the numbers are in car-deer collisions. And actually, I had a conversation with a municipal official recently. Those numbers are hard to determine because on some roads, the municipality is picking up the deer bodies. On some roads, it's the county. On other roads, it's the state. So there's no one agency that's tracking those numbers.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe the insurance companies are getting we should talk to them and find out, right? I almost want to ask you, what does someone do if they get into a collision with a deer? Any thoughts on that?
Oh, I don't know. Good question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I'm thinking about that. Well, we'll have to talk more about that another time. So how about deer fertility control? What is that?
Okay. So one important thing is don't feed the deer, because a well-fed deer is going to have more twins and triplets, and if they have less food available to them, they will resorb some of those embryos. So that is actually related to compensatory rebound effect, which is caused by hunting. So if you have, for example, 10 deer living in an area and you kill half of those deer, the remaining deer suddenly have twice as much habitat, twice as much food. They're going to have more twins and triplets in the spring. So it's important not to feed them, and that's another reason why hunting doesn't work. So there are artificial ways of controlling deer fertility. There are things like PCP, which is a temporary birth control for deer, a chemical birth control, and it lasts a couple years. You have to dart them. But what we recommend is ovariectomies. So the deer have to be tranquilized, and then their ovaries are surgically removed. And we recommend that over a tubal ligation where the tubes are cut, because if they go through tubal ligation, they still go into heat. The females will still attract males to the area. And so you might see, males still coming into the area and not as quick a population reduction as if you have the ovariectomies. So we recommend the surgical sterilization. It's a higher cost up front, but then you have, a permanent solution.
Is that being done currently here or in other states? And is it the cost, is that prohibitive?
So it is being done in other states, and you can greatly reduce that price, that cost with volunteers. And in New Jersey, we're very lucky to have 2 veterinarians who have volunteered to do it. Unfortunately, it's not being done in New Jersey right now. It's very difficult to get approval from the Division of Fish and Wildlife. So sadly, there's this political game going on. We talked about how the division promotes hunting, how they favor hunting. They have not approved a non-lethal deer management policy since 2006. In 2006, from 2003 to 2006, Princeton had deer fertility control, non-lethal fertility control, and it was working so well, the division stopped approving the policies, stopped approving the applications, and they don't allow that anymore.
Because it was working so well?
Because it was working so well, because they want hunting. The division wants hunting. And to submit these applications, you have to explain why hunting doesn't work in your neighborhood. So it's very sad. To them, hunting is always the first step.
And what's your sense, if people could vote on these matters, what direction would it go?
Most people are against hunting. Most people don't want to see the deer killed. Yeah, and in Princeton, netting and bolting is happening. I don't know how much people are aware of it. They put out bait, and then they drop, once there was a bunch of deer around the bait, they drop a net on the deer, and then they use a captive bolt gun to kill them. So a captive bolt gun is what is used to slaughter cattle. And it's a gun with a bolt that comes out partway and then goes back into the gun. So you don't have a bullet that leaves and, ricochets off of something. So they kill the deer with a captive bolt gun.
Mm-hmm. Pretty horrific. Yeah. So with that, is there a call to action or something that we can do to make a difference for deer in New Jersey right now? What's going on?
Right now, there's a dangerous bill that is in the state legislature. Right now, it's only in the Assembly. It's A4182. So please call your state legislators and ask them to oppose A4182. It's dangerous because it would expand unethical deer hunting practices. So right now, a farmer can get a special permit to hunt deer on their property, on their farmed land, if they can show that the deer are causing crop damage on their land. A4182 would expand it to other species and would expand the program to forested areas. So it would expand jacklighting, hunting from vehicles, hunting at night. And these are not just bad for the deer, they're also dangerous for people. Can you imagine hunting at night? And jacklighting is when they shine a spotlight on the deer and it, temporarily stuns the deer and makes it easier to kill them. So this would expand this program that's meant to stop crop damage on farms for deer. It would expand it to many other species, including bears, beavers, rabbits, opossums, raccoons, just about any animal that is known to cause crop damage. It's a very vague term. And it would expand these unethical hunting practices to forested land. So
we want people to call their state
legislators, your state senator, your state assembly members, and oppose A4182.
Last time we were here, we were speaking about black bears in New Jersey.
Yes.
So what's going on with the black bears briefly, and what's the call to action there?
So we want people to call their legislators and support A1967. It is a bill that clarifies the bear feeding ban. So right now we have a ban against intentional feeding of black bears. We also want to stop unintentional feeding of black bears. People leaving their garbage out, people, not taking care of their bird feeders or pet food, things like that.
Okay, so that's very important.
Yes, because we want to prevent bears from coming into suburban neighborhoods.
Yes. So some progress and much more work to go with protecting these wildlife, our precious wildlife here in New Jersey. So you are part of Animal Protection League of New Jersey, which envisions a world where animals no longer suffer at the hands of humans, but instead are free to live their own lives. APLNJ works with the public, policymakers, and government officials to advocate for programs, policies, and laws that promote nonviolent coexistence with animals. And so you play a role in that, especially with policies and laws, because you are an attorney who specializes in animal protection. So tell us a little bit about American Animal Protection League and your role.
Yeah, we're a statewide nonprofit organization. I'm the group's attorney. I have filed lawsuits to try to stop deer hunting and bear hunting. Also, I defend the free speech rights of activists. If there's a controversy over a protest, or if an activist gets arrested at a protest, I've had to fight for our right to, hold a protest, which seems ridiculous because we have the First Amendment, but there are still, some government agencies that, will try to, throw up roadblocks to those protests.
Yeah, that's really important work. So what would you like to say to people how they can support your organization?
Yeah, so we're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, our website is aplnj.org. You can make donations through our website. And we also promote veganism.
I was just going to go there. You are reading my mind, girl.
Yeah, most of our programs center around wildlife, deer, bears, geese. We also support TNR for feral cats.
Right.
And we support veganism.
So connect the dots between veganism and protecting wildlife.
Yeah, so if you are vegan, then you're eating lower on the food chain. So it takes less farmland to support your diet. So animal agriculture is a huge detriment to the environment. It uses much more land, water, pesticides, energy compared to a vegan diet. Because you are growing crops to feed to animals and then eating the animals. If we eat those crops directly, then it uses much less resources. We can return a lot of this farmland back to the wildlife.
Yeah, we'll stop that vicious cycle. So really veganism is about opposing animal cruelty and boycotting these horrific industries that profit on that cruelty.
Right.
Yeah, so any kind of final words for people? What would you like to leave people with?
Yeah, so the deer have been getting a bad rap on all kinds of things, landscape, forestry, Lyme disease. We didn't talk about Lyme disease yet. Yeah, so the animal that brings the ticks closer to humans is mice, much more than deer. So these ticks that spread Lyme disease, they can have many different species as hosts. Deer are just one of those possible hosts. It can also be just about any small mammal or even birds. So deer have definitely been getting a bad rap for Lyme disease, and all the public health agencies and scientific organizations, they don't call for hunting, to stop the spread of Lyme disease. It's common sense things like keep the grass around your yard short. If you go outside, wear long pants and long sleeves, tuck your pants into your socks. When you come inside, check your body for ticks. These are like, common sense things instead of deer hunting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To going to the extreme, right? That way, and panicking, and just let's just eradicate instead of find a way where people can change. People need to do the changing, not the animals.
Yeah. If we kill the deer, the ticks find another host, and they are mostly on other animals, not just deer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Doris, so much for providing us with so much education here today, so much common sense, so many facts, and I appreciate your passion and your work for the animals.
Thank you so much, Michelle.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We're wrapping up another enlightening show. There is a spiritual path called ahimsa. Ahimsa is consciously choosing nonviolence over violence and harmlessness over harm through both word and deed, including direct and indirect action. So whether it's a deer or human, from the largest mammals to the smallest insects, let's strive to treat every form of life with the utmost respect. Thank you for watching. Check out MicheleGranberg.com, go vegan, and join me next time on Positive Energy.